Alright. What killed 295,000 people and cost $130 billion in 2010? Natural disasters. Natural disasters have been happening since the beginning of time and all around the world. A lot of us know the story of Noah's Ark, and whether you believe it or not, somebody knew enough back then to write a story in BC time about the Great Floods. So that's a form of natural disasters. Now, the most commonly hit areas of natural disasters are North America and Asia. They actually make up 2/3 of natural disasters. Out of recorded 950 natural disasters in 2010, North America made up 370, leading Asia made up 340. There was 32 million people displaced from their homes in 2010. Some of the examples of natural disasters are earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires, tsunamis, and blizzards. Alright, the sound's not playing. There we go. That's the sound of an earthquake rattling a house down off its foundation to the ground. What is an earthquake? An earthquake is a sudden shaking of the ground, sometimes causing great destruction. Now, the reason 2010 was such a damaging year for human life and the economy was because of two major earthquakes. The earthquake in Haiti, which some of us have already heard about, killing 223,000 people and costing $17 billion. But the one that's recorded the most, even though the human life was so bad in Haiti because of the poverty there, the ones recorded as the worst was the one in Chile, which actually only killed 750 people, but cost $38 billion in 2010. What causes earthquakes? Earthquakes are, the Earth's crust is like a bunch of broke up puzzle pieces, which are actually floating on molten lava. And they're controlled by currents underneath by the molten lava. So what you have is if I showed it to you like this, two rubber pieces pushing against each other. Eventually, one of them is going to give. And when that gives, that force is done at the epicenter, which pushes to the Earth's crust and causes the violent shaking. And that's why around a lot of the fault lines and that kind of stuff, you see mountains and different craters and that kind of stuff. These mountains and hills are made by, the plates move very slowly, but the only other form of it is by volcanoes, which is lava erupting through a volcano. So there's really no way to avoid earthquakes because we don't really know when they're going to happen, but the best thing to do is avoid fault lines, such as the fault lines in California. That's why you see so many there. What's that sound? Coyote, tell me what that sound is.
It's a hurricane, bro.
There you go.
Yeah. The next natural disaster is a hurricane. And a hurricane is a type of tropical storm with a large low pressure center that produces intense wind and heavy rainfall. And that's the reason why there's a reason why 40% of all hurricanes occur in the United States is in Florida, and all in the East Coast, but not in San Diego or in the West Coast. It's because, for example, like a teapot, when you put the water into the teapot, you spoil it, and when it's reached the point, a boiling point, the smoke gonna come out, and when the smoke come out, it's gonna have evaporating. It's gonna have like the cloud shape, and exactly the same thing with a hurricane. In order for a hurricane to happen, the sea temperature must be 80 Fahrenheit degree, and that's the reason why the West Coast, the Atlantic Ocean, always have the hurricane, because the Atlantic Ocean is warmer. And in the East Coast, the West Coast, the ocean is much cooler, so that's why you never see any hurricanes in the East. And there's 5 categories of a hurricane. Depends on the wind power. The category 1 is from 74 to 95 miles per hour. Category 2 is 96 to 110 miles per hour. Category 3 is 111 to 130 miles per hour. Category 4 is 131 to 155 miles per hour. And category 5 is anything with the wind power above 155 miles per hour. And how to this is the formation of the hurricane, like I said. And how to avoid a hurricane. So basically, from my experience, the best way to avoid a hurricane is to evacuate. Because when I was little, I used to live in Vietnam, which is my country. It's like behind the Philippines. The Philippines right here. It's my country. It's right here. So every hurricane that's created near the Philippines, the last place will come is in my area, which is I live very closely to the beach, and about 1 kilometer, which is half a mile from the beach. So the more closer you are to the beach, the more vulnerable you're gonna be. So one time, there's a big hurricane about category 3, and my family was ordered to evacuate it, and my parents sent me to evacuation, but they chose to stay because they're afraid when they left, somebody might break into the house and steal all stuff and rob us. So that's why they chose to stay in the house, and which is a big mistake because once the hurricane coming, it swept everything, the roof gone, like everything was gone in the house. And they were lucky to survive because in my house there's a concrete countertop which they hide under, and the wind was very intense, so they took a table and barricade themselves, and luckily they survived. But I was lucky that I was evacuated because the countertop only have space for 2 people. And if my family had 4 people, and if I was to stay, I might not be here today. So yeah. So the lesson is like, everything valuable stuff can be replaced, but family cannot. And if, for one thing, if you choose to stay in the house, the best thing is to stay away from every unprotected windows and never light any candle flame because the wind might knock the flame over and cause a fire. It's even worse than a hurricane. And yeah, that's about it.
That right there, that's the sound of a wildfire. And a wildfire is simply the unwanted and unplanned damaging of a fire. Right there, that's Smokey the Bear. He's familiar with a lot of you, and his famous motto is, "Only you can prevent wildfires." And I was kind of doing some research. That saying is very true. About 80% of the wildfires are caused by people just being careless, which is kind of just devastating to me because it's just that we cause something incredible, dangerously to happen. I remember about 4 or 5 years ago in my neighborhood, there was a lightning strike, and it struck in the wooded area in the back of my neighborhood, and it was very dry back there. That lightning strike created a spark, and that spark slowly grew and kindled into a fire, and that fire became a very dangerous thing for the people who lived in the back of the neighborhood, because the firefighters had to evacuate the back row of the neighborhood, and it took them about 6 or so hours to put that fire out. And the one thing I remember most about that is the smoke that clouded the air. A lot of people forget about the smoke from fires. The smoke, I remember just stepping outside and just trying to take a breath, and the smoke would just lingered in the air, and it was really difficult to breathe. And kind of just to show some examples about wildfires, this famous wildfire is the Great Peshtigo Fire, and this happened October 8, 1871, so it happened quite a while ago. But it killed about 1,200 to 2,400 people, which is a devastating amount of people, and burned about 1.5 million acres. But the one thing I remember about this fire when I was looking up facts about it is that it was kind of caused by both nature and man. back then in the 1870s, people would use small controlled fires to help rid of forested areas so they can work on construction. And what they didn't count on was on October 8, 1871, a cold front came through in Peshtigo, which is in Wisconsin. And that cold front brought in some winds, and that made that one controlled fire they were using for get rid of the forested areas to help them with the construction. But the cold front came in and blew the fires from that, and it kind of just spread and spread until it eventually reached a bay, and where it kind of ran out of fuel and it was raining at the bay. So the bay kind of helped extinguish the fire, so nature kind of caused it and was a help in causing it and helped get rid of it. And then that next one actually happened this past summer. This was a Colorado wildfire. It may not be as devastating as the Peshtigo fire, but it still kind of did a lot of damage because it made 38,000 people needing to evacuate their homes, which means like you're at home one day, just kind of having fun, and all of a sudden you're getting told you need to leave your house right now. That's kind of very devastating to you because you would kind of inconvenience you. Maybe you're working for something for work or school, but it also, that fire destroyed 360 homes, so people who weren't expecting anything, their homes are gone. They just have to live their lives and find something else, like find another house, rebuild from the ground up. The next thing I kind of want to talk about is that wildfires are very common in the world. Like I said, 80% are started by people, but fires are mostly started in densely forested areas. But they can start out very small, but if they have enough fuel and the right conditions, they kind of just grow into a roaring inferno, and that inferno can just destroy everything in its path, kind of like, just reminds me of that Peshtigo fire. But, so, that's kind of how wildfires can affect us, because back 4 years ago, I never had an idea that a wildfire could happen in my neighborhood. I was just so caught off guard with the smell that lingered around. There are some things you can do in a wildfire, but you can't really, well, you can help prevent a wildfire by just being more responsible when you're out in the woods. Like, you're going camping, just be responsible when you make a campfire, because the two most common reasons for starting a wildfire are from lit cigarette butts. People just toss them to the ground and don't really give a second thought about. And the next one is unattended campfires, which is why people cause a lot of the fires. They are just so careless around stuff like that. However, there are some precautions you can take to help prevent the wildfire from spreading to your house, so these can kind of help. And the first one you can do is there's simple tasks around your house, like raking the leaves. You just rake the leaves and twigs off the ground, because those twigs and leaves are fuel for the fire to grow and burn, and if you get rid of those, it's kind of harder for the fire to keep on growing and burn your house. And another thing is mowing your grass regularly. That actually helps a lot with help preventing fires. And then the last one is removing debris or like dead branches off of your house, because sometimes those branches can overhang your roof and have a little bit of extension. The fire could just come in like maybe a little spark on that branch, and it could help cut it on fire. But that's kind of a thing I want to talk about wildfires. But I just want to say that they can occur anywhere and they can happen to anyone. So you could be caught off guard like I was a few years ago. But so for the next thing, that's not a wildfire. Someone know what that is? I don't.
Alright, so what is a tsunami? Tsunami is not just one wave. Many people think it is. It's actually multiple waves. And a tsunami occurs as a result of seismic activity in the ocean, such as an earthquake, an underwater landslide, or even a meteor from outer space hitting the ocean. And thankfully, tsunamis usually don't occur on a destructive scale where it kills hundreds of thousands of people more than 5 or 6 times a century. However, tsunamis occur in places like Hawaii every year, and they don't have one that's catastrophic every 7 years. And the reason why tsunamis hit so often in a place like Hawaii is because they're in a place called the Pacific Ocean, and that is really close to the Ring of Fire, which is where a lot of tectonic activity occurs. They have a lot of volcanoes under there, so tsunamis are very common there. Tsunamis can travel at speeds of about 500 miles per hour, which is about the speed of a jet plane. It can also reach heights of over 100 feet tall. Tsunami is a Japanese word which means harbor wave. Tsunamis retain their energy as they travel, so they don't lose it. And that's how they're able to grow and just completely move across entire spaces of ocean. One tsunami in 2004 was caused by an earthquake which had the combined energy of 23,000 atomic bombs. Now that's a lot of energy. And this tsunami ranged from Asia to Africa, and its final death toll was 283,000. And it probably cost more than trillions of dollars in repairs. So tsunamis are very destructive forces of nature. States in the U.S. which are most likely to be hit by tsunamis are the ones in the Pacific Ocean, because these are close to the Ring of Fire. We, close to the Atlantic Ocean, we're not close to very much seismic activity, so you don't have to be worried here. But if you're traveling to the other side of the United States or anywhere near the Ring of Fire, you're going to be very prone to a tsunami. And how do I be aware of a tsunami? Well, scientists can accurately calculate when a tsunami will hit us depending on the water depth, the distance, and the time. And what can I do in the advent of a tsunami? Well, you need to know it's coming, because if you don't, well, it takes an hour or two for a tsunami to hit from one place to another, from where it occurs, where the destination is. And there's this weather radio called NOAA, which broadcasts tsunami information directly to the public. So I highly recommend, if you're visiting anywhere in the Pacific or in Japan, you have this app on your phone for NOAA, so you can be aware, because tsunami takes only an hour or two to hit, and it can be very devastating. Local officials are responsible for formulating, disseminating information about, and executing evacuation plans in the case of a tsunami warning. So you want to be making sure you're looking at the local officials' directions and trying to follow their evacuation plans to survive. Get to high ground immediately, and make sure that you bring your families and all your animals and your secure objects with you, because when a tsunami hits, it could destroy everything, and it could be tossed away in the flood, and you could completely lose it. And you might want to have a disaster supply kit with you, so you can have medical supplies, you can have an emergency transmitter to help people locate where you are if you're stranded. And that can be very useful if you don't know where you are. Return home only after local officials tell you it's safe, because remember, tsunami is not just one wave, it's a series of waves. So I recommend that you evacuate and don't come back until the next day, because if you come back within the hour, you get hit by the next wave, and that would be terrible. So let's say you're in a boat, right, and you're worried about a tsunami. Well, I would recommend that you're paying attention to the radio, NOAA, because the tsunami could just erupt immediately, and if you're anywhere near it in a boat, you're probably done for. Like, you need to hold on to something. You can't swim in the tsunami, you can't try and fight it, but break your neck and drown. So you need to grab onto something. So try and grab onto some life floating device and just hope for the best. People have survived tsunamis by holding on to trees or rooftops. And I'm not exactly sure how, but I guess their will was just strong enough to keep them from dying. That's pretty amazing. So don't give up if a tsunami is actually coming for you and you're in a boat, or you don't have any protection. Grab onto something for dear life and make sure that you're in high ground. Like, don't be at the bottom of the tree, be in the top of the tree, for example. So at all costs, try and get away, but if you can't, make sure you hold on to something.
Alright, that right there is the sound of a blizzard. Now, that might sound just like wind, but sadly that's not all it is. And what defines a blizzard is it's a severe snowstorm that the winds are 35 miles per hour or faster, the temperature is 20 degrees Fahrenheit or below, and your visibility is reduced to about 1/4 of a mile for 3 hours. So, not exactly the best thing in the world. But I mean, I guess it's not going to leave all of us cold, as long as we find somewhere to go. And where it most often occurs is where it snows, obviously. I mean, you have specifically the North Mississippi Basin, Canada, Russia, India, anywhere it snows, basically, is very prone to a snowstorm to occur, such as a blizzard, which is very scary. But it can be severe, a lot worse than what I just described. That's just an average blizzard. The most dangerous blizzards can be below 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can't see it all, and that occurs for 3 hours, or actually 4 hours. It can, continue forever. And it's not the snow just falling that defines a blizzard, even though that's what most of us associate with is snow falling, but the snow on the ground can actually already be there and continue blowing. And that can be considered a blizzard as long as the snow reduces your visibility to, I can't see my hands in front of my face anymore. And what do I do in case of a blizzard is, yes, I know most of you have probably seen television productions where they portray alcohol as a lifesaver, but the truth about alcohol, actually, is that alcohol reduces the flow of blood in your body and actually reduces your blood temperature. So even though it makes you feel like you're warmer, it actually makes it to where your body is running on a lower temperature and on a less objective sense. But how to survive, now that you know that alcohol is not exactly the best method, is to get inside. And to get inside, you hear a blizzard warning, you go, I'm getting inside, I don't want to freeze to death. And that doesn't necessarily mean in a house, but if you do get in a house, that means wrap yourself up, make sure you're not, dripping wet or anything because you will freeze. And if you're not lucky enough to be able to get to your house, there is methods if you're inside of a car. If you're inside of a car, well, you're not completely lucky. You have to wiggle around crazy like this because you have to keep blood flow going. And the other way to survive in that case is you run the engine 10 minutes every hour and have the windows open. You have the windows open because of carbon monoxide poisoning, which will kill you. And that doesn't help very much, but wiggle around, turn on the engine 10 minutes every hour, and open those windows for those minutes, and you'll have some heat. You'll be doing good for those hours. And in case, you can't get to your car, you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, if you got a shovel on you, start digging, dig a snow cave. And if you don't know what a snow cave is, I'm sure you've seen igloos. Do you see that little hole right there? That's what a snow cave looks like. You dig underneath the snow and you crawl underneath, and you can make yourself a little fire in there, but don't build too big of a fire because it will smelt the snow cave and that will fall and collapse on top of you. But if you start a fire out in the open after the snow is gone, that is a way to attract attention in your snow cave. Stand inside the snow cave, right on the end, have your little fire going. And that's a great way. And don't try digging a snow cave with anything except a shovel. You will not be able to dig it with your hands. And other things that you have are windbreaks. Because the thing that's the most dangerous in a blizzard is not the snow, it's the wind blowing at you. Because the wind can actually decrease the temperature, how it feels, by up to 35 degrees. So if it's 20 degrees outside, it feels like it's negative 15. And a windbreak is something as simple as a tree in front of you, just something to stop the wind from blowing in your face and hitting you. And a lean-to, which is a triangular thing right there, is used similar to a windbreak, but you can stack sticks on top of each other or something in a triangular motion to have the snow blow over you. In that case, where you can build your fire right next to you, and if it's made out of sticks, well, obviously don't have the sticks catch on fire, and you will survive. That's the good news. And now that you know all about natural disasters, and hopefully you are better prepared in case you go on vacation, you get stuck in an earthquake, you know what to do is to, well, accept your fate, I guess, in an earthquake, stay inside, don't fall down. But now that you know how to survive and what to do in those situations, we hope you're better prepared, and have fun traveling.